Welcome to JAT Chat, presented by the Journal of Athletic Training, the official journal of the National Athletic Trainers Association. I'm Dr. Kara Radzak, an associate professor at the School of Integrated Health Sciences, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and your host for today's JAT Chat. I'm joined by Dr. Dana Golden, the lead author of Gait Biomechanics among female endurance runners, comparing days with and without menstrual cycle-related symptoms. This was recently published in the Journal of Athletic Training. Dr. Dana Golden is a sports medicine research consultant currently working with the National Women's Soccer League. Her research interests are focused on female athlete performance and sustainability within sport. Dana, thank you so much for taking your time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me, Kara. I'm excited to be here.
So, what led you and your author team to investigate running biomechanics in relation to menstrual cycle symptoms? We see a lot of people who've done some stuff seeing if it changes over the cycle, but I really like that you looked at symptoms.
So I think this stems back to when I was doing clinical work full time. Most of my work was spent working with endurance runners and knowing that within this population, they could have a spectrum of menstrual cycle profiles within that. And then knowing too, within a lot of settings, going into measuring menstrual cycle related factors, it may not always be feasible to do more physiological testing. And symptomology is still a conduit to understanding what is going on with that athlete without necessarily trying to integrate more invasive techniques. So symptomology seemed like a nice starting point to better understand how we can identify what could be going on with that athlete in relation to their sport and specific to running, understanding what are some different biomechanical factors that could be connecting and see what we could find from that.
So another thing that you guys did that was really nice was you decided to use a wearable sensor for the gait mechanics rather than bringing them into a lab to get 3D lab-based motion capture. Why did you choose this wearable tech over lab-based 3D capture?
I think we wanted to increase the generalizability to field-based sport and recognizing majority of athletes may not have access to a formal lab setting. And with the advances in wearable technology and the accessibility for commercial wearables, we wanted to mirror that and utilize technology that could be more accessible for individuals to use and see how that can be a way to better understand measurements that they might be finding while they're training.
I really like that the two pairings that you guys did of making it something that a clinician and even a runner themselves could start implementing for those like N of one type studies. Going back to this idea of clinicians using wearable tech, how confident should clinician feel about the validity of the devices? And you can talk specifically about the device that you guys used because you've done a lot of prior work with this.
Yeah, our lab group has spent a lot of time using this device to compare to the gold standard to ensure that what different metrics we are wanting to measure can in fact be considered as accurate as what you would find in a lab setting. And again, that was really to ensure that what we're seeing on the field could be considered.
Kind of like the same, right?
Yes.
Like that you're really taking something and putting it in basically a pocket, right? To be able to capture real biomechanics.
Correct.
So take us through a little bit of overview of the methodology. We kind of talked about like what you guys were looking at and how, with wearable sensor of that RunScribe, but you had participants complete these daily wellness and symptom surveys. What types of things were you looking for with that?
We wanted to ensure we were getting information related to their menstrual cycle profile, but finding that balance of also having characteristics of any activity that they were conducting. So within their symptomology, it was asking symptoms that could range from having nausea to cramps to fatigue, changes in temperature. And with respect to any activity details, if they were running that day, we would be asking the distance that they ran, the surface type that they were on, even shoe type. to just have an idea of what did that session look like for that day without us actually having eyes on that athlete for that moment.
So, how long was the study period that you guys were looking at?
For most of the literature that is recommending if you're going to track anything related to the menstrual cycle, you want to have a time period of at least 2 cycles. So for that, it's at least 60 days. Taking that into account, we wanted to have some buffer. So we extended that for 90 days or 3 months so that we could ensure we were getting at minimum 2 cycles for each athlete, as well as just some wiggle room for extra training information to combine with what we were receiving.
Now, were you forcing the women to adhere to a certain number of runs during that period of time, or was this really truly research out in the wild, see what they do?
Certainly leaning more towards the wild side. It was self-selected. These individuals were encouraged to just continue with their current training plans. We did not want to influence their motivation to train or run because we wanted to ensure that this was accurate for what this current sample of individuals were doing in this time frame.
And how did you categorize symptomatic versus asymptomatic days?
We wanted to keep it simple in terms of if they reported anything, that was designated as a symptomatic day. Because how the survey was designed, we weren't intentionally wanting to weigh one symptom that could have been reported over another because it's so individualistic. So we wanted to just ensure if they recorded something, we then were considering that symptomatic. And if nothing was there, it's asymptomatic.
Now, you did have a little bit of constraints on the run, so they had a predetermined run that they were supposed to do. Tell us more about that.
The predetermined run was to calibrate the RunScribe sensor. This run was pre-calculated from our lab for them to run outside a predetermined distance that was at a self-selected pace for them to complete. So they would do that route, and then upon returning, we would stop the run on the app that was recording the distance. We wanted to just ensure that what was being recorded matched with what we were seeing on the app that the subjects would download to their phone to track their future runs during the study. If there was a difference, we would manually correct that in that time frame, but that was the only time that this would be affected. The rest of the time, it was just actively recording, and the participants were meant to just observe any variables that were recorded, but not to influence or change anything.
So, one of the things, I mean, this was a long period of a study, right? So, you've had a long follow up. You did end up having 14 out of the 27 runners actually get viable data. So, can you kind of walk us through some of the challenges? What kind of contributes to participant dropout with these real world monitoring studies?
We recruited our sample from a running club at the university, and we had individuals who were undergraduate students as well as graduate students participating. And I think this was representative of being able to participate in a study, but recognizing these individuals had other commitments and activities in their lives. And so I think that was reflective of the drop off that we were seeing, where having a cohort in the fall semester do the study versus in the spring, we certainly saw some trends that participation might have not have been as active in conjunction to exam tasting times, or even if they had vacations like spring break. So I think it was something that we had anticipated, but certainly is always a challenge when you are allowing things to be au naturel with your sample population.
So basically, out here in Las Vegas, I shouldn't do this type of study in the middle of August, right? They're
Would be a
probably
hard
not
sell.
gonna be running. And one of your primary findings was that there was no significant difference in gait biomechanics between the symptomatic and asymptomatic days. Were you guys surprised by this?
Yes. But I will say, I think for me, it was a pleasant surprise knowing that while there is this perception that was present among this sample of they had symptoms, they did feel like it was affecting them. However, from an objective standpoint, that wasn't being mirrored. And I think it can provide a lot of reassurance for individuals knowing that while you may be feeling this in certain stages of your cycle. It isn't necessarily impacting maybe that longer picture you have for yourself of your athletic career or training window that you might be in at that point in time.
You kind of touched on this already, but many athletes really do believe that their menstrual symptoms can reduce performance. So, based upon what you guys found with your data, how do you recommend that athletic trainers can use this study to respond when athletes report that they are having symptoms and they fear that they're going to have a decreased performance or decreased training outcomes?
I think it could be a two-way street of normalizing the menstrual cycle collectively, but also have it be an opportunity for education and reassurance for the fact that while they are experiencing these symptoms and they are real and that's something that needs to be honored, it's also giving that reassurance that this isn't impacting them as much as they may think and that it's okay that they're experiencing this. It's not going to be as negatively impactful as they may believe it is.
So you didn't find any changes in the biomechanics. The gait speed was nearly identical between the symptomatic and asymptomatic days, right? So you did find one difference. What difference did you guys see between symptomatic and asymptomatic?
We did find that individuals who ran on symptomatic days recorded less running days than asymptomatic.
So they might be like you mentioned, like honoring your body, right? Having that intrinsic knowing to honor the symptoms that they're having, but really if they perform, they're still performing well. So in taking this, especially with your current position, I mean, wearables give clinicians and sports scientists this ability to look into real world biomechanics, real world training load. How could an athletic trainer, whether they're in a high school, college, or club setting, be able to practically implement wearable tech to monitor their runnings, even if it's related to what you guys found or just your knowledge of wearable tech in general?
I think for anyone who is wanting to integrate wearable technology into their setting, I think utilizing engagement with your stakeholders will allow you to recognize, for lack of a better term, getting the most bang for your buck. It's not going to be beneficial for you to take the effort and investment to integrate that tracking and record stuff if the people who you would want to have benefit from it aren't engaged or interested to receive that information. So I think having an analysis and providing those other stakeholders, be it your players that you're working with or coaching staff or performance staff, and really understanding what would be of most interest for them and then identifying how could technology serve you to meet that need would be the best approach, I think, to ensure the investment that you're wanting to do to pursue this is another point of resource for care for that athlete is getting the most use.
So, how has lesson learned either from this project or the other work that you've done most recently? How have you started integrating that into your current role as a sports medicine research consultant with the National Women's Soccer League?
I think from this project and from my previous experiences, it really has been recognizing slow is fast in terms of taking your time, being able to have patience with the project itself, and understanding things can come up that you can't anticipate is all part of the journey, but you will still get to that same endpoint. And I think with what I'm working on right now with the National Women's Soccer League, we're very much in those early stages of establishing research infrastructure. And I think understanding that there are a lot of different stakeholders at play that you want to have engaged with that project and knowing that there will be hiccups along the way is just allowing you to recognize while things may be slow in development, collectively, it's a lot of improvement and change that can benefit all in the grand scheme of things and for the future look ahead.
I love that. Slow is fast. All PhD students and junior researchers, remember that. That is great advice. So, as we kind of close up, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners, particularly about this project or even just things that you're really excited about in the world of female athlete health research?
I think there are a lot of great things that are going on right now. And if somebody or anyone is interested in wanting to look at female athlete health or any of the different branches that come off from such a large umbrella term for that, there is opportunity out there. I can't speak for any one specific thing, but just knowing that there's a lot of presence on different social media platforms that you can explore, as well as conferences that are even focused on the female athlete exist. There's a lot of opportunity out there to connect with individuals and just see that there are a lot of different areas that are being explored, even though in many ways we're still in its infancy of understanding the female athlete collectively.
Thank you so much, Dr. Golden, for taking your time to talk with us today. And I'm really excited about this work and the work that you're going to be doing and putting out in the future with your current role. And for everybody listening, I will do a shameless plug. If this is an article that you had interest in, please get ready because the Journal of Athletic Training is having a special issue on female athlete health coming out in 2026. And we are really excited about the work being done by athletic training researchers and just moving the needle forward in getting better support for our female athletes out there. So, again, Dr. Golden, thank you so much for taking your time to speak with me today. And anybody can go and get this article. It is open access thanks to the National Athletic Trainers Association. Thank you, Dr. Golden.
Thank you.